Now that we did all four C's, we have the Grand Line pirates. The pirates who are from the Grand Line. They didn't move to the Grand Line, on the journey, but they were born and raised in the Grand Line. That nigga they didn't know about the other seas, boy. They knew about the fucking Grand Line and they were there. And they just decided to become pirates right then and there. They're like, I'm on these fucking seas, nigga, and it's here. Man, let me find that shit. That's what they said. Um, so at number 10 we have Apoo. Scratchman Apoo. He ate the what did he eat? The boom boom fruit or the sound fruit? I'm trying to remember what the fuck he ate. But he can make things explode through like sound vibrations. Um, he was one of the supernovas. He then defected to Kaido's side during Wano. He was on the losing side there. Um, but he did his thing. One of the supernovas, he got a bounty over like I think 300 million. So he's at number 10 though, right? He did his thing. Um, but at number 9 we have Dorry and Broggy. I have them both, because they're basically the same. Same strength, same everything. That's why they fought each other so many times and they could never beat each other. Dorry and Broggy at number 9. You know, I say this because the combined attack from them, I don't even think Apu can beat them like individually. He can't beat them individually. He can't. Like, trust me, boy. He's these men know arm knocking, man. They know how to shoot arm attacks outwardly. They know real emittance, that kind of thing. Advanced applications of it. You know, maybe having him at number 9 is low, but I don't think so. Because at number 8, I have um at number 8 I have Crocodile. Crocodile of the Cross Guild, former number Mr. Zero of Baroque Works, Sir Crocodile. He tried to take over Alabasta, and he would have had Luffy not been the main character, but he was, and he lost that fight. Then he came to the War of the Best, and he fought at the War of the Best. He said, "Hey man, I ain't one of those dogs no more. I'm a pirate." I said, "Hey man, I ain't working for y'all weak ass animals no more." And he told them that shit. He said, "Fuck y'all." He told Doflamingo that shit. He's like, "I ain't working for you." I said, "I work for myself." I said, "Cool, boy." Yeah. That's exactly what he told him, boy. He will watch that shit again. But, he is at number 8. He has a Logia type Doa fruit, the Sand fruit. But I don't know what his hockey's looking like. That's why he's at number 8. That's why there's question marks there. You know, he's one of the wings of Buggy, if you want to see it that way. But at number 7 we got Jinbei of the Straw Hat Pirates. He was known as the first son of the sea. Jinbei. He was in Neptune's Royal Guard. He's at cool. He left. He joined Fisher Tiger. He was basically the vice captain. He made sure everybody was cool. Eventually, he took over. After Fisher Tiger died, and became one of the 7 Lords of the Sea to try to keep people off his people's dick. But it didn't work. So it was like, Whitebeard, you want me to come fight against Whitebeard? Fuck you guys, I ain't doing it. That man's not like you're trying to make him out to be. And he's like, okay, they imprisoned him. Then he was like, let me help you out during this war, please, please, please. And Luffy was like, all right, fine, I trust you. He then saved Luffy's life from Akahinu. Akahinu was trying to hunt him down. He's like, you ain't hunting this young man's dick. He's gonna be something one day, man. I said he's gonna be something one day, man. And that's what he said. And he just, got the fuck away from him, right? He then he then he, he then saved Luffy's life again after he had blood loss during Fishman Island. He was like, nobody wants to give this young man some blood. God damn it, I'll pull my fucking sleeve up and give this young man my blood, you know. And he was like, this is it, man. He told Big Mom he's like he was not disrespectful, y'all. He was like, you know, I understand what you have done for us. You know, you have, you know, treated us well. You know, as you know, best as you could for what you are. You're one of the four emperors. You know, you're busy or whatever. But I can't work for a mere emperor when I'm with when I'm with, you know, the future king of the pirates. She said, "What?" She got sideways and tried to steal his lifespan. Was it moving? He went to Wano and he was officially joined the crew. And he beat down who's who with like ease, man. Like he got bit a little bit, but nothing the Fishman Jujutsu couldn't handle, you know. And he, you know, handled that shit quickly and swiftly. And he ain't even known for his speed. But at number 6, I got Boa Hancock. Boa Hancock, she ain't weak either, man. She has, you know, almond hockey, observation hockey, and conquers hockey too. Um, she met Luffy, she was like, "Oh my god, he's cool." You know, she likes his dick. You know, you know. Apparently, she does. You know, and it's shown in other things. But anyways, she also she's the, you know, captain of the Kuja Pirates. You know, they think twice. You know, because they can be turned to stone if they, you know, lust for her or, you know, have feelings towards her like that. Um, she was gonna kill Kobe because, you know, you're coming to my place for a buster call after the warlords were dissolved. And she's like, "Hey man, you didn't get the fuck out of here." But then Blackbeard came and she couldn't do anything because the devil fruit he has is the dark fruit. Anybody would have been fucking grabbed up by that shit who has the devil fruit and then been rendered, you know, immobile. You know, I ain't throwing shade at Bo Hancock. You know, she couldn't do. You know, she was about to kill Kobe. He was about to die. You know, he was about to die that day. Um, so at number 6, I have Bo Hancock. But at number, and she's from Kuja. We understand that's on the Grand Line, don't we? You know, and all these pirates are from the Grand Line. At number 5, we have Oden. He's from Wano. He was, you know, supposed to be the Shogun of Wano, but he was like, "Man, I gotta see the world. I gotta see the world. I can't be here all the time. God damn it, I have to fucking see the world. Get off my dick." You know, and he just fucking did it. You know, and he went out to, you know, see with Whitebeard. You know, he even, you know, drew down against fucking Gold Roger, tried to, you know, and then he saw that these two guys were like, you know, different, and he was like, but he like went out and he saw this shit. He lived his fucking life and shit, y'all. You know, you know, you know, he was a member of Roger Pirates. He actually helped Gold Roger find the One Piece because he could read the poneglyphs. He then returned to Wano and shit was fucked up. You know, he danced like a fool in the streets for, you know, a while. But then he was like, "Nah, man, you created Udon prison. You're trying to, you know, fuck my people up. You know, I'm gonna, you know, go take down Kaido." You know, unfortunately, he lost that fight, and he was boiled in oil. You know, that guy was, you know, trying to be a hero. You know, and he was still because he saved his retainers. You know, the retainers were supposed to boil with him, and he was like, "Nah, you guys got to open up the land of Wano. I'll stand here and hold this shit for you guys." You know, he's a cool character. But he's powerful too, right? Because he has conquers hockey, and he was trying to fight against these, you know, powerful opponents. You know, and he was like basically the most powerful, you know, person to come out of Wano besides Ryuma. Him and Ryuma, and that's it. You know, so number 5 is Odin. Number 4, we got Big Mom, Charlotte Linlin. You know, she was from the Grand Line. They dumped her off at El Bath. Like, no, sweetheart, mommy, like, Mommy and Daddy have to go somewhere. We have to go on like a big trip. Adults have to go on this trip. We'll come back for you, sweetheart. They never came back for her. Mother Carmel was then also in on some things. She was thinking about turning her over to the world government, turning her into a cyberpol agent and other things. That was her plans and shit, right? She was trying to make moves and shit, right? But she also had killed giants and other things as a brat, and then she ran around with a man who was like, you're cool, you're cool, you're cool. I'll make food for you and shit. And then after that, she joined the Rocks Pirates, and she had a history. She was cool back then. She looked good, and she could fuck shit up. Um, However, after the Rocks Pirates, she was she got desperate, and she did, man. She started spreading her legs and shit. So she did that. She had a lot of kids. She made an army for herself, and it's cool because it's like it's all in the family and shit. My son, my daughter, they're all my officers and shit. And that's how she ran this shit. But she spread herself too thin, and she she started to deteriorate a little bit. Her and Whitebeard were the two that deteriorated, whereas Shanks and Kaido, they started to like grow since the days of Roger and shit. They took off exponentially, and they kind of dipped off. They dipped off into places you don't want to be. But they were still banging it out and shit. They still were. Like Big Mom was still taking people's lives, man, and she's showing Luffy and shit in Gear 4, um, that she's still not to so to be taken lightly. But that he's not somebody to take it. She's not somebody to take it lightly. She went to Wano to try to see what Kaido was up to, and then she sided with Kaido, and she was almost about to beat Kid in Law. She was, but then they finally locked in together and beat her. But it took a combined effort of two younger pirates to beat her. At number 3, we have Blackbeard Teach. Blackbeard Teach was born in the South Blue, or he was born in the Grand Line actually, and then he was on that island when shit went down, right? With God Valley and his daddy and all that shit. He's in the Grand Line, and he was like, Whitebeard, let me join your crew. But this boy had other plans. He was waiting for a certain devil fruit. He did his thing. He killed Thatch and took the devil fruit. He became Marshal D. Teach Blackbeard. He became one of the 4 emperors. It took him like no time at all. He really ran through that shit. He did. It took him all but a week to get that. You know, this man is an endgame villain. I'm telling y'all right now, I'm one of these people who don't sleep on Blackbeard. I don't fucking do it, nigga. He's fat. He's cracked out a little bit and looks from it, but that's a deceptive act for that guy, because really he's gonna like really fuck shit up, man. Don't be surprised when these other characters lose to Blackbeard. I won't be. But he's at number 3. The second most powerful character to come out of the Grand Line is Kaido, King of the Beasts. One on one, always bet on Kaido. Kaido showed why you do shit like that during Wano. After God Valley, he decided to make real fucking moves, and he did. He took over Wano. He beat down weak ass Gecko Moria, and he, took over. He took over Wano, and he was like, "This is how it's gonna be. You people who want to like not listen to me will be killed off. You'll be, worked to death in Udon prison. We'll feed you people artificial devil fruits, and then you'll be in my army. And you'll, serve me. That kind of thing. Defiance is not a thing. You'll be, your head will roll for shit like that. and he was really a tyrant, on that island. They couldn't defy Kaido after Oden lost. But 20 years and shit, Toki had a, plan and other things. So when shit, came to, Luffy showed up. Now Luffy did lose to Kaido a couple of times. I ain't act like he didn't. Kaido's powerful, you know. But once Gear 5 was activated, it was a done deal. And Kaido knew one day that somebody would beat him. It would only be a matter of time. And he was like, but he had been winning for so long that it was like, I don't know. And he was like kind of trying to not accept it, but eventually he accepted it when he was, boiling to death in lava, right? But it took a lot to do that to him. I ain't even saying that, it took Zoro, it took everybody to, get his health bars down and everything. You know, he had an island in the sky. He was floating an island in the sky during the fight. He was a real fucking player. But I got Whitebeard at number one. You know what? Kaido's at number one, and Whitebeard's at number two. Whitebeard's at number two because in his old age he wasn't able to do all that shit that he was able to do at his young age. He went to Marine Ford. He was fucking shit, and he was, y'all. He was, throwing, giants around like they were rag dolls. He was, causing, tsunamis. He was, destroying Marine Ford. He stood on, bullets and, stab wounds and cannons to the face. He also, fought the three admirals, and it took the Blackbeard pirates to, fill him full of lead to, finally kill him. And even with all that shit, this man, had no markings on his back throughout his whole career as a pirate. And he's from the Grand Line, nigga. He ain't from one of the weak ass seas. He's from like one of the more powerful seas. His whole life, and he was 70 something when he died. He said, I'm still, like that. That's one of the best stands in all of anime right there. I can't think of any other fucking instance in anime where, a character did that. There were some though, but that one was like really good. And he's definitely one of the best to come out of the East Blue. I got him at number two though. I got Kaido at number one. But Be Cool on the corner, because that was, power scaling wise, as far as how powerful they are. But Be Cool on the corner and let me know what you think about that in the comments.